Okay, we're good. All right, thank you. So good morning, and thank you once again for having me at your plenary. I really appreciate it. I'm so pleased to be here in person. What a nice change. It's been a long couple of years, I have to say. Today I'm going to spend a little bit of time taking you through some activities at the Law Society. I want to chat a little bit about the 2023 budget, just to give you a better idea of how that was established. I do want to chat a little bit about the upcoming Venture election, a few key operational and policy change updates for you, and some resources and reminders. Then I'd also like to take a little bit of time today to talk to you about a recommendation that the Professional Regulation Committee is currently consulting on regarding mandatory succession planning. And that's a consultation that I hope many of you will take part in and will also encourage your members to take part in. And then I will save some minutes at the end to answer any questions that you may have about anything I said or about anything anybody else said that you might want to ask about. So let's get started with the 2023 budget. Just around approach, as you know, Convocation did approve this budget in October, on October 27th at their meeting. This budget actually represents a return to regular business operations for the Law Society following, of course, the global pandemic. And it also balances that with a very challenging economic environment and high inflation rates. Our financial focus continues to ensure that we are supporting our corporate objectives as a regulator, but most importantly, because it's our mandate to do so, we support our public interest obligations to ensure that members of the public are not harmed by the actions of those legal professionals. This budget continues to incorporate and takes advantage of significant savings in process improvements that were actually developed and implemented by my team throughout the pandemic. Of course, we all know just from our own personal planning in the current circumstances that this economic situation really has a very significant impact on planning for 2023 for anyone. The organization, as the Law Society, must also make adjustments that recognize that economic situation while we move forward. But we also have to ensure that we're properly supporting our people and our ongoing regulatory work, that we're providing supports and resources to all of you, to all lawyers and paralegals, and to the public and other key stakeholders. I do think it's important to note that in budget years 2020, 2021, and 2022, we included substantial decreases in annual fees for our licensees because of the proactive changes that we made in our workflows, proactive changes to introduce burden reduction activities for the Law Society's licensees, and also because of the impacts of the pandemic that both forced us and permitted us to leverage and incur savings. The fact of the savings in the last 3 years of budget were $388 reduction in licensee fees for lawyers. Budget year 2023, though, brings us back to full activity with the added challenge of an unstable market. So the result is a fee increase for lawyers. But the annual fee for 2023 is going to remain lower than the annual fee going back over 5 years ago to 2018, despite those inflationary increases, which is a fairly significant achievement in this financial and pandemic environment in which we are all working. So our operational theme for 2023 at the Law Society is actually transformation. This budget that we've put together includes funding that is going to move the Law Society forward to support a newly elected board through its orientation and also the commencement of strategic planning to establish a new set of priorities for the next 4 years. Our financial focus, as it always is to ensure that we support our corporate objectives and public interest obligations, which in turn assures our ability to self-regulate as legal professionals. And critically, because we are the regulator, it also ensures that we can move quickly and effectively to address those legal professionals who do not do good work, and that we're able to deal with that inappropriate conduct before that impacts us all negatively and costs all of us as licensees financially and reputationally. That is our key goal. So just to talk a little bit about some more context around the budget, the Law Society entered 2022 in a really strong financial position with solid fund balances that were realized through implemented process efficiencies and also those pandemic savings I mentioned. And that was fortuitous because it solidly positioned us to cope with what became our operational and market realities in the latter part of this year and now moving into 2023. The most notable of those impacts is a significant increase in claims to the compensation fund, the lawyer pool of that fund. So just as a reminder, the Law Society's compensation fund is a legislated fund that we're required to maintain in order to support the payment of grants to members of the public who have experienced a financial loss as a result of the commission of an act of dishonesty on behalf of a lawyer or paralegal. The fund has a management policy that requires a certain amount of monies be held in that fund at all times, a minimum and a maximum amount, to ensure that we are able to address valid claims from the public against lawyers. The fund reimburses for all or part of those losses, and typically those losses involve money from estates, from trust funds held for real estate closings, and from settlements and legal actions. The actual fact of increased claims activity in the compensation fund at this particular time is actually not unprecedented. Historically, we do tend to see increased claims activity arising after an economic downturn, so this is not unusual. But the other factors and risks added on top of this made budget planning for 2023 far more complicated. As I mentioned already, the other factors we're contending with are economic. They include the decreased value of our investments, continuing financial market volatility, and rising costs and inflationary increases. As is the case with all organizations, these market circumstances have already presented significant challenges, and they're going to do so for the foreseeable future. And coming on the heels of 2 years of difficult risk management throughout a lengthy pandemic and lots of pivoting to and from workplaces and changes in work environments, it's truly unfortunate timing. But this budget plans to ensure stability through those ongoing impacts supported by the Law Society's fund balance management policies. Now, those funds are there for the purpose of managing through unpredictable and challenging times while still allowing us to meet all of our obligations. So the good news is that the organization was always ready for this kind of circumstance, and we have funds set aside to be able to support that operating cost, and they can be used to offset any negative impacts such as increases in the compensation fund or market volatility. The bad news, I suppose, is that we're here, and we actually have to use our risk mitigation strategies and our fund balances to work to support ongoing regulatory work in the near term of 2023. And we did put those funds to work, and that action actually did mitigate a substantial amount of what could have been an even larger increase due to reasons outside of our control, but nonetheless within our responsibility and our mandate to support. So the budget itself enables the corporation to focus on our core operations to serve the public licensees and stakeholders. And in 2023, we'll continue to focus on implementing workflow and process improvements and also to find efficiencies so that we can pass that along to all of you. This is a constant part of what we do at the Law Society every year. Our work in this area is going to be focused primarily on a business and technology transformation project that will see us upgrading our processes and systems to better serve public and the licensees. And we have systems that are nearing end of life and have to be replaced in order to support our ongoing work. In doing that, we also have an organizational opportunity to really rethink certain policies and processes and to streamline our work going forward. And we'll be bringing those changes forward in increments across the next couple of years. And we believe it'll make things easier for you as licensees, for the public as our key stakeholder and with expectations of all of us, of course, and for the operations of the Law Society generally. Importantly, in 2023, we continue to allocate funds to support other organizations such as FOLA and LEARN, and I'll speak a bit more about that in a moment. But in 2022, Convocation also approved several policy and program decisions which will be operationalized next year, and the development of those are also accounted for in this budget. So those new activities include an online practice essentials course that's going to be mandatory. It's effective January 2024. And at that time, lawyers and paralegals who are within 1 year of setting up as a sole practitioner for the first time will be required to complete that course. That's a significant step actually in the progression of the Law Society's competence mandate and all of the work that's done to assist new practitioners to be successful and to develop and maintain viable practices. And we also have the implementation of essential training enhancements under the licensing process, and that leverages the new Bridge to Practice platform that we have to foster entry-level competence, and that ensures that we're also providing more assistance to candidates who are becoming licensed to be able to find and use resources to help them to manage not only through licensing but also into the early days of their practice. Finally, I do want to mention with regard to our budget, we do have a capital fund at the Law Society to support our infrastructure, of course. And one of the most important investments in that area of activity is Osgoode Hall itself. As a heritage designated building and grounds, that property is a complex and costly piece of property to preserve and to maintain, but it continues as a marvelous and very real example of the importance of the justice system and the independence of the legal professions in our province. We continue to make annual capital investments in the Osgoode property, and that's informed by a 10-year facilities condition assessment, which was completed in 2020. So as I mentioned, the annual fees for lawyers and paralegals will be increasing, and you'll see them there on the screen if you haven't seen them yet. The 2023 budget uses fund balances resulting from pandemic savings, as I said. So the lawyer's fee for 2023 will be $1,981, and for paralegals, it'll be $1,035. Now that fee increase for lawyers for this year, coming year is $168 overall. The largest component of that increase, $89 of the $168, is the compensation fund that I mentioned. And let me just drill down so you have a better understanding of why that's such a significant impact this year. I spoke, of course, about the importance of the legislated mandate and our need to keep that compensation fund to support members of the public who are wronged by lawyers' dishonesty. But let me just elaborate on exactly what happened with the comp fund for this year, and there's two significant drivers. The first is an increase in inquiries and claims activity just generally. As I noted, in times of economic upheaval, we tend to see that. And also now we've had pandemic upheaval, so we're seeing a little bit more. But in particular, in the case of this increase, we are seeing a significant impact related to only 3 lawyers in the province, who over the last couple of years have been responsible for millions of dollars in claims from the public who were wronged by their dishonesty and misconduct, primarily in the real estate and estates law areas. The second impact is significant market volatility resulting in unrealized losses on the investment portfolio. So you'll see, and it is important to note, it does not take much to have an impact in the compensation fund, and we are legislated to actually support that as an organization and as a profession. So 3 lawyers did that. So those are the people that we need to watch out for. Those are the people as a regulator we need to make sure we're addressing. So in our fund balances, well, we have some losses in our fund. They're unrealized losses, that's the good news. But because our fund balance is a policy requirement, we have to make sure that we are replenishing our fund balance to meet our policies. So the $89 of the $168 actually goes towards the replenishment of that compensation fund. The County Libraries Fund portion of the annual fee, which supports the operation of the county law library system through grant funding through LEARN, will increase by $17 of that $168, and it goes up to $200 for 2023. So we have $89 of the fee going to the comp fund, replenishment $17 of the fee going to LEARN on behalf of the county libraries for the grants, and then the remaining $62 of the supports go to the increases, inflationary impacts, capital and infrastructure improvements, and general operations of the Law Society. Our general fund increases for programs, policies, and operations is actually less than 4% for 2023 in an environment where inflationary increases are running significantly higher than that. So a very prudent budget, but one that does continue and must continue to manage risk and support our ongoing regulatory obligations. So the fee, I just wanted to break it down for you from the perspective of the buckets, and you'll see here how it's allocated. 80% of our fees support ongoing operations related to our regulatory and our competence work, licensing, discipline, investigations, all of that activity. Also funding for our board and stakeholder obligations, relations, and activities as well. 10% of the fee is allocated to fund the grants from LEARN to the county libraries in the system. 5% is for the comp fund, thanks to those few nefarious lawyers that I mentioned a moment ago. And finally, 3% is for the capital fund, much of which is directed toward the ongoing refurbishment and maintenance of our heritage site. Now, as you know, the annual fees are calculated separately for lawyers and paralegals. Paralegals do not share in all of the expenses of the Law Society, nor do they benefit from all of the non-annual fee revenue. So, for example, paralegals do not contribute to the operations of Learn for the libraries in the counties. We also, of course, support other organizations. In 2023, the budget continues to do that, and as you can see here, we support the Federation of Law Societies of Canada, and that's the coordinating body for all 13 law societies across the country with whom we work and coordinate very closely on regulatory issues. CanLII, or the Canadian Legal Information Institute, and that's the online legal information service and database of cases that is now a mainstay of research for lawyers and also the public across the country. Learn, Inc., of course. Pro Bono Ontario and Law Commission of Ontario, and also the Federation of Ontario Law Associations, FOLA. Now, I know that funding for law societies is a priority, so I will just elaborate on that. In this budget, the overall funding to Learn remains consistent with last year at approximately $9.6 million. Learn receives the most significant funding from the Law Society of all of the additional organizations that we fund, and that is for the ongoing work to maintain the county library and legal information system, with Learn providing grants to all of those libraries to support those collections and that staffing. Learn's 2022 budget last year, as you'll recall, included a request for $900,000 in funding for a transitional budget, and the Law Society agreed to provide that from our unrestricted funds. A portion of that funding was used to expand the suite of digital services and resources that are now available to licensees across the province, with these costs now embedded into this budget and forming part of Learn's operational budget for 2023. With respect to FOLA specifically and Law Society funding, FOLA did have underspending in its meeting and plenary session expenses due to events and meetings being held virtually, of course, and now we're back in person, which is great. But this 2023 budget for FOLA contemplates a full return back to in-person events and meetings for all of you, and that has been incorporated in the budget and approved by Convocation. So that's it for the budget today, but I did think in light of upcoming election and the variety of issues that were being discussed in the lead up to that, and perhaps some things you may have been hearing around, it might be a good idea to actually give you a better understanding of the intricacies of our annual budget and how that comes together. But on that note, I do want to take a look ahead to 2023, and one of the most interesting activities, of course, that we have happening in 2023 is going to be the bencher election, which takes place in April of 2023. So let me give you a closer look at that and how that's going to unfold so that you can all get ready. Nominations for the bencher election are open until February 24th. They are already open now, and we have received some nominations, actually, I can advise you. So we're looking forward to seeing everyone who comes out and is seeking election. The nomination package, including the nomination form and a lot of valuable information about running as a candidate, can be found on our website, of course. New for this election, in case you're interested, anyone who has not been an elected bencher previously has to complete a 45-minute online bencher candidate orientation and education course. It's imperative. If you're running for bencher, you should understand the public interest mandate of the Law Society and the importance of acting independently on behalf of the public when you're making decisions regarding regulatory and other policies on behalf of that public. The education course plays a role in ensuring that those who do think they may want to run for bencher understand what that entails and the expectations that are placed upon them. So in March, the voting guides for all the paralegals and all the lawyers who will be running will be available for all of you. And those voting guides will assist you to get ready to vote. They'll include information about each of the candidates who is running, and it'll also explain the mechanisms of voting, which is an online activity. Voting is going to occur in April, from April 19th to April 28th. So this is a much shorter time period than in previous elections, so I want you to keep that in mind. You have only 10 days to vote. And in that 10 days, there is actually a substantial amount of content to digest regarding the positions of those who are seeking to be elected. Remember, there are 40 lawyer bencher positions to be filled, so there's 20 outside of Toronto and there's 20 inside Toronto. And the results of the election will be announced on May 1st of 2023. The new bencher term with our new board commences on May 25th, which is the first meeting of convocation after the election. So I certainly encourage all of you and all of your local association members to actively participate in the election, research the candidates, understand who it is that's running for election, be clear on what each of the candidates stands for, and consider that in the context of the fact that as a member of the Law Society's board, each elected bencher is obligated to support the Law Society's primary obligation to ensure that we manage risk of harm to the public and that we also assure the positive duty of legal professionals to maintain their high standards of competence, conduct, and professionalism. Most importantly, please vote. I'll leave it at that. All right, let's go on to a few operational updates. Mandatory compensation. Convocation approved a mandatory minimum compensation for lawyer licensing candidates during articling and also during their work placement component of the law practice program. And that amount is $620 per week. Convocation also decided to implement the framework for a period of 3 years, after which it'll review and see how the policy is working out. The creation of an exemption to the framework is also approved, and that'll be part of the implementation plan as we move forward. And as many of you know, this completes a rather lengthy deliberation around this issue, and it supports the recognition that articling candidates should be recognized for their work efforts and that they develop their skills by helping practitioners in their practices, and that also helps those candidates to move closer toward perfecting their own craft as they look to become licensed as lawyers. Also wanted to mention the Certified Specialist Program. On September 29th, Convocation suspended a previous decision about the winding down of the Certified Specialist Program pending further considerations. Convocation referred that Competence Task Force recommendation to the Professional Development and Competence Committee of the Law Society, and they'll be consulting on this issue with the profession. And the PD&C committee is expected to report back to Convocation before the end of 2023 with its recommendation on certified specialist. I wanted to just spend a moment to talk about some licensee resources and take this opportunity to let you know about a new resource that's available to you from the Law Society and just refresh your memory on some of the others. This is information that I really do hope that you'll all distribute to your members in your local associations. It's really important information. We continue to get hundreds of thousands of connections from members of the profession contacting us to get information, and these are generally the main conduits of that information. So we start with the Technology Resources Center, which was launched at the end of the summer. This website has been created to support and encourage technological competence among the professions. It provides professional guidance about the use of technology as well as access to technology resources all in one place. You can find it on our website. The topics include everything from cloud computing and cybersecurity through to selecting technology for your practice and how to effectively work remotely. There are training videos and tutorials as well for some of the technology products that are commonly used to support practicing. That would include things like basic office software, financial management software, marketing tools, and within all of those and many other categories, there's a more granular look at some specific automation and workflow options as well. Practice Management Helpline continues to be a very valued service. We get close to 10,000 calls a year on this helpline. It's staffed by experienced representatives and legal counsel who work with licensees to help them with their professional responsibility or practice management issues. You can access this help via phone or email. Never hesitate and tell your members never to hesitate to contact that helpline. They're there to ensure that you avoid issues in your practice, and it's strictly confidential. Coach and Advisor Network continues to be a really active conduit of support and advice and connects experienced lawyers and paralegals with those who seek to develop a specific skill set or tackle a practice management issue. Those interactions may take place perhaps over a few months through some coaching, or they're looking for an advisor who could be made available to provide feedback and advice about a client file or a specific client issue on a shorter engagement. So just-in-time advice that many of us do need, particularly if we don't have the support systems or other colleagues readily available in a particular practice area, and we need help understanding a little bit better what needs to happen next in a client file. Commitments are as short as 30-minute phone calls, or can be 4 or more hours over 3 or 4 months, and that time can be used towards your CPD annual requirements each year, whether you're taking advantage of the coach and advisor network or you are a coach or advisor, either way. Discrimination and Harassment Council, for those of you who were at last year's plenary, you'll recall that we had one of the council from DHC speak with us. I wanted to just remind you that the DHC provides a safe and confidential space for individuals who have experienced discrimination or harassment by a lawyer, paralegal, or lawyer licensing candidate in Ontario. No charge for this service. Please make sure individuals know that they can call us anytime, strictly confidential again. Wellbeing Resource Centre was created by the Law Society as part of our commitment to support the mental and physical well-being of Ontario's legal professionals. We all know that being a legal professional can be difficult work, and none of us is immune to a loss of resilience throughout our careers. Perhaps more so now than ever in a world with ongoing turmoil like we're seeing now, having a variety of programs and resources to support well-being is really important. This site features articles, resources, research, and initiatives that you can take advantage of. And never forget that we have the Member Assistance Program to provide focused and personal counseling for those who are in need of greater supports and advice. I did want to mention, finally, the first supplement to the Indigenous Guide. The Advocate Society, the Indigenous Bar Association, and the Law Society worked together to publish the first supplement to the guide for lawyers working with Indigenous peoples, and we did that in late September. The supplement to the guide continues the fabulous work that was started by the original guide, and it covers the significant advancements in the law involving Indigenous peoples since the guide came out in 2018. The supplement provides practical information, tools and resources for those working with Indigenous peoples in the justice system, either as clients, as witnesses, or opposing parties. And it also provides guidance to the legal profession on issues that are emerging and evolving in Canada's justice sector, including trauma-informed lawyering, land acknowledgements, the impact of new domestic and international legal developments, and many more topics. So that's all for resources today, and there is a handy resource sheet that's available. The link is on this slide when you go into the materials. I think even the guide itself or the resource sheet might be available on your full website. Quick reminder about Law Society awards. Each year, Law Society does recognize outstanding and accomplished licensees through our annual awards, and the diversity of the practices and the licensees who are receiving these awards is absolutely tremendous, and we'd like to continue to recognize the amazing efforts of all of our fabulous colleagues. So please give some thought to those in your profession, in your areas of Ontario who you feel would be worthy recipients, and please nominate them. Every second year, we also nominate and recognize a person whose work has advanced human rights or the rule of law as well. So that individual nominee doesn't have to be an Ontario licensee, so think about nominating individuals for that award as well. So I want to move on now to mandatory succession planning and walk you through that proposal, because I think this is a very important development and one that requires input from all of you. So let's walk through that, and then I'll take a few questions if you have any. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this is a proposal on which the Professional Regulation Committee is currently consulting. So in 2021, the Professional Regulation Committee established the Trustee Services Working Group to consider numerous proposed changes to the trustee services activities that we undertake at the Law Society and the issues around the custodianship of practitioners' practices and legal files. The recommendation from the working group to the committee is that the Law Society establish a mandatory requirement for licensees in private practice to maintain a succession plan for their professional business. So a succession plan, often sometimes called a business continuity plan. I want to be clear on this. The committee is considering this recommendation and whether to advance it to convocation for approval or not. No decision has been made about this particular item. We need to hear from licensees, particularly those who are going to be most impacted by this. So how did we get here? Trustee services at the Law Society is primarily engaged where a licensee ceases to practice law or provide legal service, but has not made appropriate arrangements with respect to winding up their practice, usually as a result of death, illness, or incapacity. In most circumstances, licensees do have arrangements in place to ensure the protection of their client property in the event that they must suddenly or unexpectedly cease practicing law or providing legal services. Unfortunately, it's the experience of our trustee services department that some practitioners, and it is particularly sole practitioners, and those working in cost and space saving arrangements, they plan to fail for sudden or unexpected events that may impair their ability to maintain their professional businesses. Where a licensee ceases practicing law or providing legal services unexpectedly without making appropriate arrangements for their professional business, trustee services must step in to protect and distribute the client trust monies and other property, assist with the windup of the business and the transition of all of the client files. But by the time trustee services finds out that they need to intervene in a practice, it's often weeks after the licensee has actually stopped working. And then trustee services doesn't have any of the necessary information about the licensee's practice to intervene immediately. They have to take the time needed to access all of the files, all of the digital records and files, and locate all of the trust accounts and business accounts. It takes the Law Society's trustee services department hundreds of hours to work to recover and wind up a single practice and store the vast amount of affiliated paper and digital files. And these are costs that are rarely recouped from the licensee's estate, and therefore they're funded by all of us, by licensees. It costs well over $2 million a year to operate the services area, and as the age of licensees in solo practice continues to rise, without succession plans in place, that budget is going to continue to rise as well. And these are the issues that the recommendation seeks to address. So what's the context here? Well, the context is that we have an aging population of sole practitioners. And here you'll see on the slide the stats about those sole practitioners. In the past 15 years, most importantly, we've seen a phenomenal 240% increase in the number of sole practitioners over the age of 65. Now, I personally do like to think that the 60-ish age group is now the new 40-ish age group. And so I completely understand the interest in remaining active, of course. But realistically, with this many mature members of our profession continuing to engage that actively, if there's no plan for a crisis for our practices or our work, we're all at greater risk as a profession. The proposed requirement is that the working group is recommending that a new requirement applicable only to licensees who are in private practice would be to maintain a succession plan that includes what should be considered just basic information and adequate arrangements to allow for the handling of client property and management of the professional business. And that would include the appointment of a successor licensee, the provision of passwords and the means to access computers, emails, and practice records, the details of and access to trust accounts, trust funds, and other business accounts, and the location of open and closed files and client property. The working group did acknowledge that there may be some licensees, for instance, in remote locations, who are unable to find a successor licensee. And so it is also recommending that a process be developed to allow trustee services to assist in identifying appropriate successors and to help to facilitate those arrangements. The working group is also recommending that the requirement be supported by a full suite of resources to help practitioners ready themselves for this, and that the requirement would be implemented through the Law Society's bylaws, and then reporting would be included in the normal course as part of the annual report filings that happen every year. Sole practitioners would confirm that they have a compliant plan and that they've obtained the consent of a successor, and licensees who practice in firms who have partners or associates in their firm would be required to confirm that their firm has a compliant plan, including a contingency in the event that no members of the firm are able to carry on the firm's professional business. So I might just ask, just by show of hands, how many of you in the room actually have a succession or business continuity plan with a designated successor? Okay, so that's not bad. You're many steps ahead, but it looks like many people do not, and that just shows us that we do have a lot more work to do to protect the public and to protect the families of the practitioners who are going to be the ones who are going to be left behind with what is going to be an extremely difficult exercise of managing this kind of a transition because they don't understand the practice and can't do anything with it without help. So we need your feedback. It's a very comprehensive report and recommendation. I certainly encourage you and the members of your associations to review it, give us your feedback, send it in. There's an online form that you can fill out to send in to us as well if you prefer. Please, as you're thinking about this proposal, give us your thoughts on a couple of questions like, what are the roadblocks to succession planning for licensees? What are your thoughts on that? What supports and resources would be most helpful to you? Let us know. And are there any specific aspects of succession or business continuity planning that you think should be the focus of more thorough guidance and advice from the Law Society? No decisions have been made on this proposal. I'm going to just repeat that again. It may or may not actually be moved forward to convocation, but what we do know is that we need your input and we need your feedback in order to do that, to best understand how to protect the public and how to best support licensees to maintain viable practices. Most importantly, we want to be able to be in a position to help licensees transition from their practice. Whether that's in an emergency or with a methodical plan, we hope that the transition is going to be the end of what will be a great career and not a disaster for someone's family. So please provide your thoughts. We look forward to hearing from everyone. A couple of final notes. Please make sure you stay in touch with us. Ensure that you have your most up-to-date information in our portal so that you can maintain your updates on your professional obligations. We do issue the licensee update 10 times a year, and it's chock full of updates and policy activities. Stay connected to us. Make sure that you access our resources, find out about our events, learn how to run as a venture candidate, or nominate someone for an award, and also make sure you look for our Gazette. There's lots of great articles and blog posts. So that is it for me today. Fair bit of information. Just wondering if anyone has any questions that I can answer for you today. And by the way, I'm around all day as well and into the evening. So if anything comes to you later, I'd be happy to answer it later as well. So are there any questions that I can take? Yes.
Hi, Jane. I wouldn't say so. 1 second.
Yeah.
Katie. Thank you. It's not a question, Jane. It's a suggestion. Just in terms of the succession planning, like you said, you're inviting comments, but it's only until November 30th. We're almost mid-November already. Most of us need to get this information back to our members and stuff. Maybe December 30th or something?
Sure. Well, you know what? As soon as you can get it to us, please do. We're going to start gathering information as soon as we can, and we'll continue to gather. We'll probably do a prompt out in our update as well to make sure people are sending it in. So as soon as you can, but even drop me an email if you think you've got something coming and you haven't been able to get it to us, and I'll make sure it gets to the right people. So no problem. Yeah, at the back there.
Thanks. In regards to the specialist certification, what's the direction it's going in? You said, okay, we've suspended the cancellation. Is it going back for, because I know we're having our association dinner next week, and
Sure.
So I'm entirely certain I'm going to be having some questions on this, and I'm wondering, is it going to okay, we've canceled the canceling, or is it we're changing how we're canceling and we're thinking how we're canceling?
Well, that's a great question, and I like the way you put it. I can firmly confirm that we're changing the way we changed it. No. What happened was that Convocation did approve that the Certified Specialist Program was going to be ended, and it was going to end at the end of this year. That has been suspended because the time frame, it was felt that it wasn't enough time and that the membership didn't have sufficient opportunity to weigh into the issues. So it's in suspension. What that means now is Certified Specialist Program is as it was. It's still operational right now. It's continuing until such other decision is taken, and the PD&C committee has till the end of 2023 to make a recommendation. So right now, the Certified Specialist Program is live and active. All the sections are available, and people can just continue. Nothing changes for now. Yep, you can apply. It's still running. That's what they did. They suspended the decision entirely. Okay?
We've got one over here.
Hi, thank you. I was just wondering whether the Law Society would consider making a video of a mock licensee going through the ID verification process, following the rules that are on the website. It's been something that I've heard in many different places from many different people. Lots of smart people are really struggling to figure out exactly what they can do and what they need to change from what they have been doing.
Sure.
And I would love just a video of watching someone do it in the various ways, and then that would be very easy to push out to the membership.
Okay, thank you. That's a very good suggestion. Certainly, we've heard from the membership, and I'm sure we'll be hearing from you further, that it's not as intuitive as it might be, and you could use some more explanation. So I will take that back. That's a great idea. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Hi, Diana. Early in your presentation, you referred to I think, a 10-year plan for the grounds and buildings
Yes.
at Osgoode Hall that was made in 2020. I was just wondering if that accounts for what we're hearing about the Metrolinx redevelopment of that property, or if that is all out the window at this point.
That does not account for that. They are planning at the moment to potentially put an entrance to the subway on our front lawn. And it does not, that infrastructure's support and savings does not account for any noise or foundational infiltration or any of that at this point. So that would be additional increased costs if that were to actually happen to the property.
Another follow-up, not a follow-up, but another question.
Sure.
Just a further question. I promise it's the last one from me.
Okay.
I know perhaps we're all thinking about it. I want to know if those 3 nefarious lawyers in our province who have caused the compensation fund to be depleted and our fees to be increased, have they been disbarred?
Well, I can tell you that one is actually no longer living. So I guess he is disbarred. And the others are no longer practicing. I mean, this is absolute egregious misconduct and dishonesty, and they are no longer, but they are the gift that just keeps giving. Yeah. Yeah.
We've got a final question over here.
This is just a follow-on to Doug's question. Do you have any update? Like, do you know what's going on with the Metrolinx proposal?
I do, and it would take me a long, long time to set it out here. But what I can tell you is that my understanding is that Metrolinx is marching along in accordance with their particular drummer, and that is their plan. And for those of you in the room who may or may not know, we have been actively, as the Law Society and my team, working with various community stakeholders and heritage stakeholders around attempting to move that entrance location somewhere else. And we continue to actively work towards attempting to do that. So there are really no updates since last time. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's so nice to see all of you here in person.